I had a profound teaching when I was about 12 years old by a Buddhist monk in my Sunday school, and that teaching taught me three characteristics or three conditions of life. Number one was that life was impermanent and uncertain. Number two was that life was not satisfactory and it had suffering in it. The third one was a little bit more difficult for me to fathom because it said there's no such thing called self. And there was me, my body and my mind that was existing as a 12-year-old. I couldn't quite fathom that. But the first two, so in terms of life being uncertain and impermanent, we tend to try to seek things that are permanent to anchor on for our safety and our security. So that, looking for that in a material world seemed to be bringing suffering, because that's a never-ending search to find contentment and happiness in the material world, which is outside us. So in the teaching, also I was taught that when there is suffering, you can find joy. And when there is impermanence, there can be things that are permanent, but in that search for permanence, it's not out there in the outside world, but I was taught that that's within, and that can be had from a mindfulness practice. So what a mindfulness practice can do, I was taught, was going into a meditation, a quiet time in meditation and a contemplation and a reflection, can put things in perspective to realize what am I suffering with, what am I seeking and lacking, and what am I in that cycle of looking for something, searching for something all the time, and to get off that train, to cut that, and to find the satisfaction within me by shifting my mind to things that will bring me a certain satisfaction or a certain equanimity in this roller coaster of life, of happiness, joy, and then suffering that goes back and forth. So if I have health, I can be ill sometimes. If I can have happiness, I can have sadness sometimes. So this roller coaster then is what messes us as we live our daily life. So what was taught to me was that a meditation and a mindfulness practice can then help us to shift the mind to a place to put things in a better perspective. So to accept suffering for what it is too, because it's there. It's a normal thing. Impermanence is a normal thing too. And also to seek those permanent solutions within me rather than those things. And of course, those things are important too. My relationships with my family, that gives me a certain sense of permanence, an anchor. A home, a conveyance, those things give me a sense of an anchor and a permanency too. But to realize that they are actually not permanent. What's more permanent is the fact that my reality is there. So in those terms, then to move on to this whole notion of non-self, as I'm moving on to my senior years, I'm realizing that condition or that characteristic of non-self, because as I get older, I feel more vulnerable, I feel more fragile with my body, because I realize that it's now on its way out. So in terms of those three teachings, those three conditions that was taught to me, it has helped me to accept, especially when things go wrong, that yes, I was taught that at a young age, to accept that when things don't go my way, to accept that, and how do I then work my mind around it. So this is what the mindfulness practice, along with those teachings, that has done to help me, is to accept the impermanence and accept the suffering in life too, and to find the joy in life in other ways by going inward.